Hi, thank you for joining me. So there's an old Zen koan, a puzzle, that says, if a tree falls in the woods with no one around, does it still make a sound? I think that's a really interesting question, and it's something that gives rise to some really sort of deep physics and philosophical ideas. So what if we suppose that no, when the tree falls, it doesn't make a sound, because sound, as we understand it, sound is only created by the act of hearing it. So sound is created actually in our brains through the electrical impulses sent when our ears pick up vibration, without an interpreter of the sound, without a person or an animal or even a camera that can record those vibrations. Then there isn't actually sound. There's just air particles being moved. So without an observer, without someone to give meaning to the sound, it's just moving atoms. Just like when you use a TV control and you press the button, infrared radiation's emitted, you can't see it, and if there's no TV or skybox or whatever around to be controlled by it, it doesn't have any meaningful existence. You can't see it, so there's no one interpreting it to give it meaningful existence. So it's only the act of observing that actually gives it meaning and existence. So from that perspective, your act of observation, your eyes seeing visible light, which is just a very tiny part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Remember, infrared that comes out of remote control is just another part of the electromagnetic spectrum that's a slightly too long wavelength for us to see. So it's just an invisible type of light. So by our eyes being used to interpret part of the electromagnetic spectrum, we call light and colour into being. If there wasn't anything in existence, if there wasn't us and other beings that see in colour, if we only saw in black and white, then there wouldn't be any colour, because there'd be no one interpreting it to give it meaning. Similarly, your ears and your brain create sound. So if our ears were tuned to higher frequencies, so above what humans can hear, if our ears were just tuned to ultrasound frequencies, then everything that we can now hear, all the music, all the voices, all the sounds that we ever hear, wouldn't actually exist. The particles that are moved would still move in the same frequencies, but it's only the electrical messages that are passed through our brain, our brains itself, our filtering, our perceptual systems that actually create it into sound, that cause it to be sound. And similarly, if it wasn't for us interpreting our physical environment at the scale that we're at, then our physical world wouldn't really be in existence. So quantum physics tells us that nothing observed is unaffected by the observer. So quantum physics experiments show that by the mere act of observing something taking place, we affect it. So realistically, that means there are no observers. So you aren't an observer of the world around you, you're a participant in it. Whether we acknowledge it or not, we are participants in the universe, we're active parts of the universe, and our every thought and action actually affects the universe. So you aren't separate from your environment. You can't remove you from your environment and still be you. So the food that you've eaten today, the air that you've breathed, some of those atoms become part of your physical body. Some of the atoms that used to be in you are now in me. Similarly, if you removed you from your environment, if you took you out of planet Earth, you, as you judge yourself to be, would cease to exist as you. So what is you? What are you? At a subatomic level, when we look inside the atoms that our bodies are made up of, we're almost entirely empty space, 99.99999% empty space, and then that stuff that we think solid, when we look more closely at that, that's nearly all empty space as well. So the takeaway message is, there isn't really anything physical there. The boundaries that we judge to be our bodies aren't really boundaries at all. They're not physical boundaries, because we're just empty space. So our boundaries are actually just perceptual boundaries. Boundaries that arise from the frequencies in the universe that we can interpret. So from the visible light, the audible sound, and the physical frequency bands that we operate on. You aren't actually made of solid stuff, you're mainly empty space. So that means that your body, your physical boundaries, as we thought them to be, aren't actually the bounds of you at all. Stuff can move freely from your environment into your body, so that's not a boundary. So if your skin's not a boundary and you can't separate you from the earth, if you can't remove you from your environment and still be you, as we know you can't, remove you from the earth, from the supportive, nurturing environment of the earth, you cease to exist. And the earth is inseparable, indivisible from its environment, its immediate environment, the solar system. It's the relationship between the sun and the earth and the moon that allows the earth to be the supportive system that it is. And you can't remove the solar system from the galaxy and still have it the same. You can't remove the galaxy from the universe at large and still have it be the same thing. And whatever's beyond our observable universe, you couldn't remove our observable universe from whatever else is out there and still have it be the same universe. That means you're an indivisible part of the whole universe. That means you are the whole universe experiencing itself at a single point of consciousness. So you're a function, a process of the entire universe, called John Smith, called Lauren Jones, called whatever your name is, in a temporary physical form. You're the whole universe experiencing itself exactly where you are. Thanks for joining me.